In this episode, we talk about the abduction of 5 Indian migrant workers who had been working in Africa. We also talk about Russian President Vladimir Putin rejecting a ceasefire ultimatum from key European leaders. But first, we talk about how India and Pakistan agreed to end their military confrontation. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to 3 Things, the Indian Express news show. After 4 days of fierce confrontation, during which Pakistan attempted to target Indian military facilities using drones and missiles, the 2 nuclear-armed nations agreed at 5 p.m. on Saturday to end all firing and military action. And while Pakistan violated this agreement just few hours later, border villages in Kashmir, as of this recording, are slowly returning to normal. What's also worth noting is that it was US President Donald Trump who claimed credit for the agreement, saying that it was the United States that brokered the ceasefire. And while reports suggest a call between the US Secretary of State and Pakistan's army chief helped de-escalate the situation, India has not officially confirmed these claims. To tell us more about these developments, my colleague Shashank Bhargava speaks to the Indian Express's Diplomatic Affairs editor Shubhajit Roy. The conversation took place yesterday afternoon.
After Operation Sindoor, what we saw was that there was this sharp increase in cross-border fighting. And then later, what we saw was Pakistani drones and missiles attempting to strike Indian military facilities. And the army said that on the night of May 8 and 9, Pakistan had deployed 300 to 400 drones across 36 locations. And then the next day, more areas were targeted, especially those in the border states. And this confrontation went on for 4 days. Now, can you put this into context? When was the last time something like this happened?
Well, it happened last time was in 71 war. The scale, if we go by it, scale and scope of the attacks, say, for example, from across along the north and western borders. Also, it reached up to some of the other parts of the country. And Kargil also it happened, but it was mostly, confined to the areas where the conflict was playing out in Kargil. So it's been a while since such confrontation took place between India and Pakistan.
Right, and what we saw during this time was that there were blackouts in several towns, precautionary measures were taken, patrolling was going on in border towns, there were evacuation plans that were being prepared. But during this time, do we now know the kind of damage we ended up incurring?
Well, we saw damage being done in some of the parts. We don't know what in the military installation areas what kind of damage has been done. That has not been made public, nor do we have an official confirmation of the damage in Indian sort of military equipment. There has been the Indian Army and Air Force officers who are briefing. They did say that some of Indian personnel and infrastructure have been targeted and have suffered. But and we have seen a lot of reporting by our reporters, in different places where these places have seen some damage on the roads or some craters, and some of that damage is visible. But we don't have an idea about the damage to the military infrastructure.
Right, and it was only on Saturday that both sides agreed to a ceasefire. They decided to stop this confrontation. And a lot of people actually first came to know about this through a social media post by US President Donald Trump, where he said that the 2 countries agreed on a full and immediate ceasefire after a long night of talks mediated by the United States. Now we know that even after this ceasefire, some drones were launched by Pakistan in Kashmir. But tell us, what do we know about how this ceasefire came about and what was the US's role in it?
Well, what we have seen so far, and as per reports that have come out, that, it was the US government, US administration, which made the phone calls to both India and Pakistan at the highest level So Vice President J.D. Vance, he called up Prime Minister Modi with some alarming intelligence information that Pakistan is going to escalate. And over the weekend, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who's also their National Security Advisor, he called up Pakistan Army Chief General Asim Munir. And that was the first direct contact between the Trump administration and the Pakistan Army Chief, which was significant when the call took place. And so that sort of set the ball rolling for talks between the two sides, and the militaries spoke to each other, and they came to an agreement that they'll stop firing at each other and taking military action. India, by the way, has not called it a ceasefire officially. It has just called it the stopping military activity and firing. So that's what the Foreign Secretary said, Vikram Misri, in his statement. And then we saw in the evening some ceasefire violations, some firings that took place, and some reports took place. But after that, it quietened down, and over time, there's been sort of calm along the border areas. There's been no reports of firings or attacks through the night. So I think so far, as per the initial reports, the ceasefire or the sort of understanding is holding.
And Shubhajit, what do we assess was the reason this agreement was reached? What made Pakistan and India change their minds, and what got the US involved in this?
Well, it was not on both sides to escalate matters. India and Pakistan, they know the disadvantages of going to a full-scale war. India wanted to make a point by attacking the terror locations inside Pakistan, and Pakistan wanted to resist and sort of retaliate to, as it saw as infringement of their territorial integrity and sovereignty. So it was not in the interest of both sides. And for the US, South Asia is seen as one of the hotspots where these two countries, India and Pakistan, are nuclear armed neighbors. And they didn't want it to reach a stage where, it led to the unthinkable, the nuclear option comes into play. So I think that's why US was sort of interested. And over the years, I think US has had relationships in both countries with the Pakistan military and the Indian government to have that leverage to kind of, tell these two countries to kind of back off and not indulge in attacking each other. And although Indian officials have maintained that it's been bilaterally negotiated, there's no third-party involvement. And because, as per the Shimla Agreement of 1972, India doesn't want any third-party involvement and no sort of foreign parties' involvement in mediation. So it maintains that. But as we have seen from reports and sort of public claims by US officials, starting from President Trump to Marco Rubio to Vice President J.D. Vance, they're all saying that how US sort of brokered this ceasefire agreement. So yeah, that's where we are. I think the US had a role to play, and we'll have to see how this ceasefire plays out.
And can you also talk a bit about what was Pakistan trying to project with this confrontation, especially to the international community?
Pakistan saw it as an infringement of its sovereignty, that, 9 locations, some of them urban centers, densely populated urban centers like Sialkot, Bahawalpur, Muridke, they being attacked. And then also Lahore was also the airport, the air defense system there as well was attacked. So it saw it as an infringement of its territorial integrity and sovereignty. And so that's how, it played the victim card in front of the international community, that the Indians were attacking themselves, completely omitting the fact that it was they, as Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri pointed out, that they are the ones who started the thing in the first place by, authorizing or sort of being behind the scenes of the Pahalgam terror attack on 22nd of April. So I think we have seen Pakistan trying to rally support for itself through China, to Turkey, through other partners that they have. And I think that's how Pakistan tried to project itself as sort of trying to defend or protect its territory when Indians, missiles and rockets, and they attacked Pakistani locations.
And you mentioned, how it wasn't in either country's interest to start a war. But, given the state of Pakistan's economy, could it have managed to continue this confrontation?
I think a small scale confrontation was possible. Whether a long drawn industrial scale war was sort of in Pakistan's economic interests or not, I think that is sort of under question. You rightly pointed out about their economic situation, where they, in fact, went for a bailout package of 2.3 billion US dollars just over the weekend. And I think we saw that too playing a bit of a role in them dialing down, them de-escalating, because despite India's objections and India's abstention at the IMF board meeting, they were able to secure the loan. So they could portray it to the domestic audience as a win, that despite Indian objections, they were able to secure that bailout package, which, by the way, was negotiated, vetted, scrutinized, scanned earlier itself, and it was just a mere formality before the board signed off. But it was also a sort of leverage in the American hands that could have played a role. We don't know for sure, but the timing of the bailout package and the meeting also gives us an indication that could have played a role in them agreeing to de-escalate from military action.
I mean, you mentioned how, this was just a formality and the deal was already done. But, one would imagine that getting these funds could enable Pakistan to use it for defense purposes, for example. But is that not the case?
Absolutely. That was the point that was made by, I think, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri in one of his briefings, that people who generously open their pockets should see how Pakistan has used these funds. And that was precisely the point why India sort of raised its objections and abstained at the IMF board meeting. But I think the international community saw this as a sort of important leverage to change Pakistan's behavior to some extent, and at least for the time being, for short term, to discontinue with the military actions that it was indulging in.
Basically saying that you're getting this money, so you better get your act together, and we don't want you to be engaging in these activities unless you don't want another bailout from the IMF.
That's the idea, but we don't know whether it was said in as many words. But I think that's an educated guess that we can make.
And Shubhajit, talk about what are the things that New Delhi is keeping in mind right now, especially considering how unpredictable Pakistan can be.
So terrorism remains a major concern, the topmost concern for India when it comes to Pakistan-sponsored terrorism on Indian soil, on Indian people. So it has maintained that while the military action has stopped, the firings and the actions have stopped on the border, there's a pause. But the other diplomatic, economic, political steps, from cancelling of visas to stopping of trade to suspending the Indus Water Treaty, closing the airspace, stopping trade, all of those elements remain in place. So essentially, it's not as if peace has broken out. It is that currently there is still a tension, still a standoff, but not at the military level, but at a political, diplomatic level.
And now, moving on from India-Pakistan tensions, we talk about a case of abduction. Last month, on 25th of April, 5 Indian migrant workers were abducted in the West African country of Niger while they were returning to work after lunch. These 5 men, Chandrika Mehto, Sanjay Mehto, Raju Mehto, Faljit Mehto and Uttam Mehto, are all from Jharkhand and were employed with Kalpatru Projects International Limited, a company involved in power transmission, distribution and urban infrastructure projects. Now, to understand what happened, who was behind the abduction and what steps the Indian government is taking, we are joined by the Indian Express's Shubham Tigga. Shubham, tell us, what do we know about what happened when these people in Niger got abducted?
So, as we know that on April 25, there was a violent ambush occurred in Tilaberi region of western Niger. So, all these workers were from Jharkhand's Girdi district, and they were employed with Kalpatru Project International Limited. So this is the Indian company which is working in Niger as well. So for last 3 years, it's been working. So suddenly what I got to know from my sources and the workers from whom I was in touch, they told me that suddenly when they were about to resume their work after the lunch, suddenly a convoy of over 100 armed militants riding in pairs on motorbikes, carrying guns, suddenly they just came and attacked the local police there. After which 12 people from that police died, and Amid this chaos, Indian workers also tried to escape the location. But what happened is that the bus on which they were trying to escape that got stuck in the sand, and after which around five these workers from Kurmi community, Sanjay Mahato, Raju Mahato, Chandrika Mahato, Faljit Mahato, and Uttam Mahato, were unfortunately caught and abducted. So this is what I got the information from the workers who are still stuck in Niger.
And what do we know about the people who have been abducted and them going to other countries for work? And how common is this practice for the migrant workers from Jharkhand?
So, after talking to the members of these abducted workers' family members, what they said that they were working in different places. In previous years, also we have seen before 2-3 years or before COVID, they were working in different areas. Some were working in Mali, some were working in Malaysia, some were working in Gulf countries. So what is happening that after every few years, couple of years, they are working in different locations. They're changing location after every 2-3 years. So these are the workers from Kurmi community. All are from the Kurmi community. So that day also I spoke to some workers that why do you go to other countries? What are the reasons and why you don't want to work in India itself or in Jharkhand? So there are multiple reasons if we talk about the migration of these workers, like lack of paying and the limited opportunities in India, especially in Jharkhand. They highlighted that we don't want to work in Jharkhand because there are lack of opportunities. We don't get enough pay. Most of these workers are working in either in Gulf countries or African countries because they offer better pay, more regular salary, and basic facilities also like housing, food, electricity. All these facilities they get other countries is much better if we compare it to Indian facilities. This is what they have said. For example, that day what this worker who is still stuck there, Moji Lal Mahato, he told me that the same company which pays them 25,000 for similar work in India, the same company will pay them for around 45,000 in Niger. And on top of that, the workers also told me that the company ensures money is sent after every 3 months, and the living cost and the other facilities are also manageable and timely. And what he said is even in the conflict prone regions like this, the pay is much better than India's, and safety concerns are very good if we compare it from the Indian industry.
So 5 people got abducted, but there were some who managed to escape the situation as well, right? So are they still in Niger? What do we know about their situation?
So yes, I mean the other workers, including all these workers who were successfully escaped from the location, they are still in the same place. And I also spoke to the person today as well. He told me that we are still here and we are waiting for the government to rescue them. They want to come back to India, but still there are some security concerns. I think they were telling that they have been given a couple of days to decide whether they want to go back to India or not. So it was also said to me that some of them are actually trying to renew their visas, but as far as I got to know, they told me that they want to come back. I mean, the government is still trying to bring them back to India. And for the future planning also, I asked them that what you will do after coming back to India. I asked to the workers who are still stuck. So they told me that we will come and we will not focus on the African countries. Now we are going to move to Gulf countries. But before moving to the Gulf countries, we will just analyze the place and everything, and then we will go. So this is what they are saying. I mean, even after coming back to Jharkhand, they are not going to work in Jharkhand because of the facilities or the payment or everything. So they will move to some other countries, especially in Gulf countries.
And Shubham, you mentioned the families of the people who have been abducted. What did they tell you when you spoke to them?
I mean, it's the same condition at everyone's home right now. It's heartbreaking. I got a call from one of the family members. He is Mahesh Kumar, brother of Raju Kumar Mahato. So he's the brother and he is also working in Bangalore. And after hearing this news about his elder brother, he just immediately came back to Jharkhand. When today he called me and he asked me that, did you get any information from your sources from Delhi or from the embassy or something? So I couldn't say anything, but yeah, including him, there was one more person who have been abducted, Sanjay Mahato. He is the friend of Raju Mahato. So Sanjay Mahato's wife, Soni Devi, she is still, It's heartbreaking that their children are asking that when our father will return to India and when he is going to call us. So situation at everyone's home is similar. They are still in the vulnerable situation where the government is still not giving any clear answer to them.
And Shubham, we understand that their families also reached out to CM Hemant Soren. What efforts have been made by the state and the central government towards finding them?
So what I got to know from the family members that they approached the CM and through some activists, through some former political leaders. So CM had tweeted after this incident, when the incident came into light. So CM Hemant Soren tweeted about this and urged the Ministry of External Affairs to intervene and ensure the safety return of these abducted migrant workers. I spoke to JMM senior leader Supriyo Bhattacharya. He only told me that the state government has been in constant touch with the ministry, but as of now, no concrete update has come from the center regarding the release of the workers. And on the other hand, there are some people, for example, there is a person, Sanjay Mehta, who is a former MP candidate from Hazaribagh. So he is constantly in touch with the family members. He claimed that some of the Indian workers have already been moved to Niger's capital, Niamey, and while others are remain in that same place where the plant is located. So according to him, they all want to return, and even the laborers also told me that they want to return back to India. However, I think Mehta is also raising another concern that the state government lacks that power of or mechanism to bring back the workers, and that the central government needs to exert more pressure. And I think he also says that state government and the central government is not doing enough in this case, and media is also not giving much attention on this issue. So yeah, this is the current situation right now.
And Shubham, as far as Niger is concerned, has an investigation been launched there? And are there any suspects or any information about the groups that might be involved in this?
So as of now, there has been no any official update either from the Indian or the Niger government. No one has taken the responsibility of the abduction as well. And this is what I got to know. So there has been no formal communication from the abductors with the government. And I spoke to the company spokesperson also, and even he told me that we can't tell the name of the group, that who is the responsible group behind this incident. I think this is likely because of the security concerns. But according to my sources and the people who are working with the family members and who are in touch with the government, state and government, central government, they told me that there is a group called Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, ISGS. So this is the suspected group behind this incident. ISGS is an extremist outfit active in that region, and it has aligned itself with the Islamic State in 2016. So it is quite active there. So what I got to know from my sources, this is the group, but still in the absence of any confirmation from officials, we cannot definitely say which group is responsible.
And Shubham, have similar incidents happened before in Niger or in any other country that involved migrant workers from India?
So yes, the same incident repeated in 2018 when the four workers from Jharkhand and from the same district, they were abducted in Afghanistan from Talibani group, and after 2.5 years the Talibani group left them and suddenly they just leave them, and after that I think this is the second incident happening in Jharkhand.
And Shubham, we also understand that the State Migrant Control Room, or the SMCR in Jharkhand, also looks after the needs of the migrant workers. Have they said anything about the situation?
So, State Migrant Control Room is a body which works for the migrant workers, and it's under the state's Department of Labor, Employment, Training and Skill Development. So, what they said that they are still closely monitoring the developments, and one of the officials, she told me that they are in regular touch with the company and have halted all the work operations in Niger until safety is assured. So the control room is also coordinating with the MEA only, Ministry of External Affairs, and they are saying that we are ready to support the whatever Ministry of External Affairs is going to take action. We are going to support whatever we can do. But the major work should be done from the side of MEA only. The pressure that should be put on the MEA should be done from the state government. So they are claiming that we are putting pressure on MEA, but Still, we have to see what exactly this mechanism, either from the state government or the central government, is doing to rescue all those workers.
And in the end, we talk about Russia and Ukraine. The United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Poland have jointly demanded an immediate, unconditional 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine, warning of harsher sanctions and expanded military aid if Russia failed to comply. But Russian President Vladimir Putin has rejected the ceasefire ultimatum, according to a report by The Guardian and Reuters. Putin instead proposed direct negotiations with Ukraine in Istanbul later this week, offering no commitment to halting hostilities in the meantime. He said, quote, "We don't exclude that during these negotiations we will be able to agree on new ceasefires," unquote. The Guardian reported that Putin's response came via a late-night Kremlin press briefing. The coordinated ceasefire call was reportedly delivered during a joint visit to Kyiv by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, and Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. The Guardian reported that US President Donald Trump joined the event virtually. Starmer said that they were calling Putin out, and if he was serious about peace, then he has a chance to show it now. He further added that the demand was for an unconditional ceasefire, rejecting Putin's conditions, and warned of sanctions and increased military aid for Ukraine if Moscow refused. Ukraine Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha said on social media that Kyiv and its allies were prepared for a full conditional ceasefire on land, air, and at sea starting Monday, conditional on Russia's agreement and independent monitoring. Earlier, Russia had unilaterally declared a 3-day ceasefire to coincide with its Victory Day celebrations starting 8th of May. Ukrainian officials, however, reportedly viewed this as a tactical pause, claiming that fighting continued at the front despite a lull in missile and drone strikes. Putin presided over Russia's Victory Day parade in Red Square, where he was joined by several foreign leaders, including China's Xi Jinping and Brazil's Lula da Silva. The Guardian quotes Starmer saying, "Putin didn't need conditions when he wanted a ceasefire to have a parade, and he doesn't need them now." President Macron, according to the same report, said the conflict threatened the core principles of European and global order. The Guardian also mentioned that President Trump made only brief comments to reporters. He said, quote, "Get this stupid war finished, that's my message for both of them," unquote. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank, Bhargava, and me, Niharika, Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.